Welcome to Milwaukee. My name is David. This is week 11 of 52 churches in 52 weeks. If you like to stay up to date with this spiritual journey, feel free to hit the like button and subscribe. If you like to read about the first 52 churches in 52 weeks, it's on Amazon. I'll leave all the information below. For today's visit, it's going to be a little bit different. I've been dipping my feet into the dating pool again. Sometimes I feel like, man, maybe it'd be great to apply for like one of those reality TV shows like The Bachelor or The Bachelorette, and then it kind of dawns on me that it would be a terrible idea. They just have a camera on your face all day long as you're trying to build attraction with someone else. And it kind of dawned on me for this week where it's like, wait a minute, there was a Christian equivalent of that. So if you remember a few years back, it was a show hosted by Natalie Grant, and it was called It Takes a Church. So the premise of the show was you'd take one single bachelor or bachelorette that was part of a church body, and you'd have all these matchmakers with their single friends or sons, daughters, and then they would try and match. What would happen is the first round, the church would actually vote for 3 people to continue, and then the pastor would vote for a 4th person. And then they do these really cringeworthy type of round by round contests until the end where they actually went on a date. It got me thinking. In the first 52 churches in 52 weeks, I started seeing a huge similarity between churches and dating. So typically there'd be 3 stages. Number 1, you would take a risk, you'd set a time, you'd find a place to meet. You were trying to set up a date. So the second step would be you actually go out on the date and you'd do your meet and greet, you'd sit down, you'd have some fun, maybe you'd eat something, and you would wrap things up by wishing each other a fond adieu. And in the back of your mind, you'd probably be wondering what kind of moron ends a date by saying adieu, but that's why I'm single. Now what? So the third step in dating is follow-up. And that's probably one of the most important steps when it comes to dating, but also when it comes to attracting new church members. So in dating, if you respond and you take too long, the other person's probably going to be like, well, he or she doesn't really care about me, so I'm just going to move on. If you respond too fast, you come off as overly desperate. If you're someone who decides to spam the other person with like 15 consecutive voice messages, text messages, Facebook messages, singing telegrams, Morse codes, carrier pigeons, smoke signals, trying to do everything possible to get the other person's attention, you are entering stage 5 code red clinger. So when it comes to dating, a lot of people don't know how to follow up. And after visiting so many churches, doing 52 churches in 52 weeks the first time, I found out dating and courting new church membership, it isn't all that different. You'd think responding to first-time visitors would be common sense, but as I learned, for a lot of churches, it's just not that way. So for today's church, we're going to be checking out Epikos Church in downtown Milwaukee. Epikos Church, they were one of the participating churches in It Takes a Church. What I want to say with this church, a church that participated in a Christian dating game show, how do they welcome me? How do they date me? How do they follow up, especially to see if I come a second time? So we're going to check it out. I'm going to run over there and see what this church is all about. So stay tuned.
Don't
Word to the wise on first dates. Don't be creepy. I think for this particular visit, I must have freaked someone out because I had my phone out probably too much when it comes to chronicling and documenting this spiritual experiment. So someone kind of acknowledged to me, what are you doing with your phone? That's on me. I gotta be a little bit more cautious on that. Afterwards, I met the campus pastor, and great guy, fantastic beard. And we got talking, and he asked how I heard about their church. And I told him, have you ever heard of the show It Takes a Church? And he acknowledged it, and it sounded like they would like to have that one back. At the time, you get the chance to have Natalie Grant, a Grammy-nominated Christian singing artist, sing in your church. You have the opportunity to bring singles and this promise that, maybe you can create some type of Christian relationship. It sounds great on paper, but I'm sure when you see all the reality TV show cameras coming into your church, you get a little bit of second thoughts going through your head. When it comes to the comparisons between dating and churches, especially when it comes to follow-up, I kind of mentioned a few things that I thought Epikos Church did amazingly well. In dating, especially Christian dating, you go there to cultivate a relationship with each other that hopefully will lead to marriage, and you can create that covenant marriage and bring God in. When it comes to churches, you also are trying to follow up with first-time visitors, and you're trying to create community. You're trying to cultivate. You're trying to build something where it will help not just develop a relationship between the church and the congregant, but also everyone's relationship with Jesus Christ. So when it came to Epikos Church, I was really, and I guess I shouldn't say I was surprised. I was expecting them to be really good at this, but when it came to the follow-up and how to connect with first-time visitors, they knocked it out of the park. So let me show you a couple different things. So you walk in and you get your bulletin. And the very first thing that they had on here is, when it comes to a first-time visitor, here's what to expect. And not only that, but then they had these Connect cards. And the Connect cards, you just fill in your information. You could leave prayer requests on the back. These Connect cards are bright orange. And I found out last week after attending Elevation Church, they gave away free Bibles to people, and the color of the Bibles were bright orange. So anywhere that you look, you're seeing this bright orange Connect card. There's no excuse how you can't see it. They had it in the bulletin. They had an announcement by the campus pastor. They also had just tons of Connect cards on the sides of all the pews in the church. And not only that, there was mentions about you can just connect online too. So there was no chance to miss how to get connected with this church. The number one mistake that churches make is they don't know either how to get contact information, or they don't do anything with the contact information. Some of the churches I went to for the first 52 churches in 52 weeks, I'd leave my contact information, and I would get written notes from some churches. I'm not going to open these up now, but they'd be handwritten. If there was another church where I left my email address, churches would follow up within about 2 to 3 days after the visit. Was really impressed, and those type of churches always left a really great first impression on me, and it made me want to visit a second time because they were inviting to me. The problem is most churches don't know what to do to get someone in for a second time. So for instance, there were a few times where I would go to a front desk and I'd ask them, hey, what do you have for a first-time visitor? I was shocked at how many churches had no clue what to do. They had nothing to give me. One church information desk member, he just kind of zigzagged his eyes around, and he's like, well, we don't have anything, but here's a book that was written by another church nearby that we participated with. Maybe this will help you out. So it's like, well, I'm just going to go visit that other church. Another mistake that I saw a lot of churches do was what's in dating is called ghosting. So for this one, I'm going to try a little bit of some camera editing. So let's try this out. All right, so when it comes to ghosting, it's basically in dating, it's a disappearing act that's done in hopes that the other person will just get the hint. So in dating, I get it. There's a lot of weirdos out there. But when it comes to church, ghosting was absolutely mind-boggling to me. Like, why bother to make disciples of all nations if you can't even lick a stamp, slap it on an envelope, and then just say, thanks for coming? When it comes to ghosting, you don't get any kind of explanation. So then you're kind of in the back of your mind, you're kind of doubting yourself. It's like, what's wrong with me? So if you go to a church and you leave your contact information, you remember when you write down personal information, and for a church to take that and do absolutely nothing with it, that was probably one of the churches that left the worst impression on me, because I gave you contact information. Reach out to me. You don't do it. You ghost me. See you later. Another mistake. How long would you wait for a potential romantic interest to reach out to you? Would it be 2 to 3 days? That's usually the best. A week? Maybe. How about 2 to 3 months? I had 2 different churches from the first 52 churches in 52 weeks that gave me follow-up cards. I had already moved on to a different church, but in the back of my mind, I was wondering if I kept going to this church and it took them 2-3 months to send me a thank you note that I visited the first time. I don't know what it is, but it just would feel really off and make you feel like such a low priority to continue going to a church that would take that long to respond to say thank you for visiting us the first time. Just weird. Now, what would happen if you waited 2 to 3 months for that potential romantic interest or church to follow up with you, and you get something back, but now they're asking you for money? That's what happened to me with Joel Osteen's church, with Lakewood Church in Houston, Texas. And the very first thing that they sent me is, I'd have my name here, but then they just wanted me to know, God wants to bless you more than you know. What do you want to give us for money? An offering card. And then they also gave me this letter. So the letter would say, God wants you to continually remind yourself that it's His pleasure to bless you. If you'll believe this and begin to live this way, it will change your life. So the letter didn't really mention anything about Jesus or Christ. It just left a vague message that your donation or your tithe would be going to something of hope, whatever that meant. They were just very vague on it. The last truly bad follow-up I got from a church was from Scientology. And what Scientology did is they gave me all these little pamphlets. So not only would you wait for a response from them 2-3 months later, but then they gave you all these cards with these perfectly jawed models on here, and they would ask you to take some kind of test. And the test was basically asking you how bad do you stink at life? And no matter what you answered, you had to go back to the church to do one of their efficiency courses. So that way they would be able to fix you and make you better. So if you were dating someone and all they wanted to do was critique your flaws and show you how they could make you better, I probably would advise not to go out on a second date with such a person. But anyway, with Epicos, when it came to what they did with their Connect cards, it's 2 days after visiting the church, so I'm still waiting on a follow-up. 2 to 3 days, I think, is usually a good point to see what happens. But again, when it comes to dating, you go there to give. You're going there to cultivate, build a relationship with each other, hopefully building something towards marriage. When it comes to church, you're trying to cultivate a relationship with a new church member, build community, which will then build a relationship with Jesus Christ. So when it comes to dating, when it comes to church follow-up, it's not all that different. So when it comes to this, hopefully that if you're a church leader or you have something when it comes to reaching out to new believers, maybe this will kind of show you some things that will be helpful and not to make so many mistakes that so many churches tend to do. So that's going to wrap it up for week 11. My name is David with 52 Churches in 52 Weeks. If you want to read about the first time, feel free to check out the book on Amazon. It's free to read on Kindle Unlimited, also paperback, ebook, and hardcover. So like and subscribe if you want to stay up to date with this spiritual experiment. Until next time, thanks for watching.